the dawn of our species, size, height, and strength have been extremely coveted by the masses. For examples of this, look no further than the various religions practiced throughout the ages. From Hercules to Goliath, these mythical figures were simultaneously revered and feared for being bigger and stronger than the average individual. In more modern times, with the advent of new technologies, it is not uncommon for someone to possess one, maybe two of these traits, but all three? That is quite unusual. However, history has demonstrated that exceptions do exist in almost every setting. A mountain of a man with unbelievable strength did once roam the planet, and his name was Angus McAskill, the Scottish giant. Angus McAskill was born on the Isle of Berneray, Scotland in 1825 to two parents of rather unremarkable stature. He was, by all accounts, a normal-sized child. His family was large, consisting of at least 10 siblings in total, many of which never made it to adulthood. In 1831, his family relocated to the south side of St. Anne's Harbor in a district called Englishtown, Canada, where he lived for the remainder of his childhood. It wasn't until adolescence that McAskill began towering over his peers. By age 14, the locals began to refer to him by the Scottish Gaelic phrase Gael Mór, or Big Boy. He grew so rapidly, in fact, that his father was forced to raise the roof and lift the ceiling of the family home to accommodate him. By 20 years old, he had already reached the mind-boggling height of 7'4", and by 23 years old, McAskill topped out at a ridiculous 7'9" and weighed in excess of 425 pounds. Other incredible body measurements include a shoulder width of 44 inches, palms that measured 8 inches wide and 12 inches long, a wrist circumference of 13.5 inches, an ankle circumference of 18 inches, and he wore boots that measured 17.5 inches long. McAskill was simply enormous. Even still, he was mild-mannered and never lashed out at anyone unless provoked. Speaking of which, at the age of 14, he traveled by schooner to Sydney, the largest town near where he lived, to visit the taverns. While there, a local gentleman stepped on McAskill's enormous foot while he was dancing. Upon realizing, everyone erupted in laughter while McAskill remained stoic. This happened a second time, but McAskill still refrained from retaliating in any way. When it happened a third time, he stood up and struck the offender in the jaw with such force it was believed by everyone in the room that he had just killed the man. The captain later found McAskill hiding on the ship, praying that the man was not dead. Luckily for him, the man awoke some time later, certainly woozy from that enormous punch. Although pathological giants are rare in today's society, they do still exist. What is intriguing about McAskill is that he did not have a condition that caused him to grow to such a size. He was a true giant. By all accounts, he was very normally proportioned, just abnormally large in every dimension imaginable. The Guinness Book of World Records recognized him as being the tallest non-pathological giant ever, possessing the largest chest measurement of a non-obese man at roughly 80 inches, and as being the strongest human being to ever live. His inhuman strength was very apparent early on. McAskill worked on the family farm and as a local fisherman, where he purportedly carried a 60-foot beam on his shoulder, set a 40-foot mast that weighed many hundreds of pounds into a schooner, threw a 300-pound man over a woodpile 10-foot high and 12-foot wide, could pull the bow off of a fishing dory when a crowd of fishermen hauled back on the stern, and was able to lift grindstones weighing nearly 600 pounds as easy as sugar lumps. He was also rumored to have lifted a 2,800-pound ship's anchor to chest height and carry barrels over 350 pounds under each arm. It was even said that he could lift a fully grown horse over a 4-foot fence. If these stories are to be believed, Angus McAskill is unquestionably the strongest person in history. As far as employment goes, McAskill quite enjoyed his secluded life fishing in northern Canada. However, harsh weather caused crop failure in northern Nova Scotia, which made him need to look for a new job. In 1849, McAskill began touring Lower Canada and then the United States in 1850 as a traveling attraction, demonstrating his strength and size. While on tour, McAskill often dressed in Highland costume in honor of his Scottish heritage. In 1852 or 53, he appeared in P.T. Barnum's traveling circus, on display with a pathological dwarf named General Tom Thumb, who stood just 3 foot 4 inches. Together, they were quite the act. Unsurprisingly, he performed many strength feats on the road. His favorite was to take a 140-gallon barrel of whiskey, punch the top so hard the cork would fly off, and hoist the enormous barrel overhead and drink while toasting to the other patrons. Not so much an act, but another noteworthy event occurred while he was on a train traveling to his next show. The story goes that when a group of robbers entered the train to take money, McAskill simply stood up and frightened the robbers to such a degree that they ran away with no loot. Another story with rather dubious authenticity goes that while on tour, he met with Queen Victoria of Windsor Castle. Upon bearing witness to his size and stature, she proclaimed him to be the tallest, stoutest, and strongest man to have ever entered the palace, and presented him with 2 gold rings. After this, he stomped his massive foot into the carpet to show his true strength, which left a permanent imprint on the floorboards. It was at the palace that McAskill allegedly held William Wallace's sword in his hands at arm's length, being one of only a select few to ever do so. McAskill never turned down an opportunity to demonstrate his strength. While on a pier in New Orleans or New York, French sailors bet McAskill that he would be unable to lift an anchor weighing between 2,200 and 2,700 pounds. He successfully lifted the massive weight with relative ease, and even walked with it on his shoulder for some time. However, when dismounting it from his body, his grip slipped, and the anchor dropped, badly damaging one of his shoulders in the process, causing him to retire from strongman indefinitely. After this rather tragic event, he returned home with the wealth he had made from show business, where he peacefully operated a store and mill for the remainder of his life. He was apparently a very good businessman, and never turned down a customer. Unfortunately, after taking a trip to the capital city of Halifax in 1863, he became violently ill. Angus McAskill died in his childhood bed on August 8, 1863, surrounded by his family and friends. Later that week, Halifax Acadian Recorder reported on his death, stating that his mild and gentle manner endeared him to all who had the pleasure of his acquaintance. The country mourned his loss, and he was buried in the Englishtown Cemetery along with his parents. His burial mound dwarfed all others in the cemetery. In his honor, numerous monuments and structures have been erected. In 1977, a new Englishtown sea vessel was named after McAskill and soon became the most popular ferry in the area before being replaced in 2008. In 1989, the giant McAskill Museum was established to display replicated artifacts used by McAskill in life, and is currently owned and operated by a local community group. So what do I really think about Angus McAskill? Was he really the strongest man to ever live? Perhaps, but it is very unlikely. He was a kind and gentle giant who was demonstrably strong, a towering figure whose legacy continues to live on in those who remember him. McAskill lived by a very simple motto that served him well throughout his life. What's worth doing at all is worth overdoing. This is certainly a message we can all strive to live by. I hope you all enjoyed another installment of my documentary series on this channel. Now tell me, who would you like to see next? Drop a comment below telling me your recommendation, and until next time, this is Forgotten Fitness, signing out. Bye-bye.